All right, ladies and gentlemen, good evening, good afternoon, good morning. This is episode one of the Friday Night Fundamentals. My name is The Real AE, also known as Aaron Evans as well. Today we're having a conversation about fundamentals. Now, why am I doing something like this, especially day one? So I want to go ahead and set the tone for what Friday Night Fundamentals are all going to be about. Number one reason, why did I start thinking about Friday Night Fundamentals? Like, why was this something that I thought about? Why is this ever an idea? One thing that I always cherish is the power of information. And I think journalism and the way that we report news is something that I have very passionate about. I have a high level of adherence or a high level of awareness of how the media game works, especially graduating with journalism and mass communication. I studied how media outlets communicate, how to write things, how to say things. And that was very purposeful in the worlds of entertainment and things like that. But when it comes to the financial markets and news, it's almost like it's an entire different world. And I feel that there's not a lot of people who are as energized as the skill set of trading than the fundamental side that is definitely as effective of knowledge, just like technical analysis in trading in the foreign exchange market, stock market, crypto market, however you want to look at it. I truly believe that fundamental analysis is just as deadly as important as technical analysis. I think it's definitely the same. I think there's a high level of value that we have to take a part of, but there's not people who are willing to teach that game because it's higher level. It is advanced. Fundamental analysis is not easy to understand. It's not. But by doing the things regularly and opening your eyes and seeing certain things, how things are worded, how things are said. So this whole Friday Night Fundamentals is going to be developing the new age, the new generation of people who understand news, people who understand how folders affect their daily trading life, people who understand what an acquisition means. What do mergers really do? How do you capitalize on these things? How can you read an article? And so, okay, where's the money involved? Because as much as people do not want to accept it, this is your very first lesson about fundamentals. Everything you think about money is not true. One of the biggest lessons that I had to take, especially diving into the world of fundamentals, I had to literally learn to unlearn everything that I thought about how the world works. Like I had to unlearn and then relearn how the world works. Because now when you look through the world through a lens of how money is being moved, the world moves completely different than what you think it is. A lot of the things that we do in our life are financially driven. So if you know that you are financially driven to do certain things, then who's to think that these big banks, these big corporations, politicians, do you not think that some of the decisions that they make are not also financially driven? If you think that's not the case, then you are sadly mistaken. Then you'll never understand fundamentals because guess what? What you're seeing on the chart is a result of people's decisions that were already made. Do you guys understand that the candlesticks on the chart are lagging indicators of decisions that were already made? Remember, you don't run the market. You don't have the money to move the market, but yet we trade in a market that's run by other people. So guess what? If the market itself is run and operated by other people that we can't see or we don't know who's out there, then who do you think can determine which way the market is going to go based off of what you feel like it's going to do? No, we have to logically think. We have to logically come to the understanding of, okay, if I want to understand the market to a higher level, if I really want to understand this fundamental game called fundamental analysis, then I have to be comfortable sitting in the backseat and asking the hard questions. You might have to ask a lot more why questions than how questions. Not, oh, how did this happen versus why did this happen? Okay, what drove someone to meet up with X person and exchange information to make a transaction? Here's an example. Why did you even click this Zoom link to join this call? Right? Because you in your mind made an agreement. You made a decision that, okay, I'm going to give Aaron my time. I'm going to give him some of my energy. I'm going to spend the currency of time so I can gain the product of knowledge. There was a transaction that you just took. You spent your time to then gain knowledge. That's just like, what did you do? You spent money to buy clothes. You spent money to get a haircut. Do you really think that people don't spend time to make a decision, and then that decision has a financial result of that, proof in the pudding. I spent time hanging out with you if I go on a date. I take you on a date as a guy, and you go and you're a girl, and I take you on a date. I spent time, energy, and money to create a good time for both of us to enjoy. Right? That's what we did, because we knew that the end result was a good time, or I want to meet somebody new. In the game of fundamentals, what you're going to learn is you are going to learn that super rich people meet up together, have conversations behind closed doors, they come to a decision, and that decision then is publicized publicly, financially. It's just, you know what, another way you want to look at this, think about every famous athlete that you know of. LeBron James, Steph Curry, Serena Williams, like Cristiano Ronaldo, right? Those are big names that we all know. And then you know how they work hard and they play the game, they play the game, they play the game, and then a club or a team says, hey, we want to trade. And then guess what? They do those negotiations behind closed doors. And then we find out via Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, that, oh, they just signed to a 4-year, $255 million deal. Well, guess what? When did the deal actually happen? When was it? When it was reported or behind closed doors? If you can answer that question in your head, then you can now begin to understand fundamentals. The deal wasn't signed when the news outlet reported it. The deal was made behind closed doors, and then somebody behind closed doors went to a publicist and said, here's the information. And then the media was the medium to report said news. The financial market works the exact way. When you see a jobs report, when you see data come out, when you see the Federal Reserve says something on stage, when you see a stock company make a deal, or they buy another company, or they buy an acquisition, those news articles that we see on TV, that stuff was already decided on behind closed doors. We're now just figuring it out. So if you want to get good at fundamentals, this is just to get you started. That's how you're gonna have to think. Because when we dive into information, when you dive into fundamentals the right way, the only way you have to grasp that understanding in your mind is you have to be comfortable unlearning and relearning the way the money moves in the world. Okay? So that's the only way you got to make sense. Drop a 7 if this is making some sense. I know we got some people live on here on Zoom, but see, let me know if this is making some sense. Like, this is the basic foundation starter. Be ready to unlearn what you thought you knew and be able to learn something new. That's the only way you're going to get a grasp of this. All right. So that's how fundamentals work. Now, to give you more context of fundamentals a little bit, I actually have a presentation here, and it does dive into some of the beginning things of fundamentals, especially if you're an investor, especially if you're a trader. I want to go ahead and dive into the way that you do this. Like, how did you dive into fundamentals as a beginner? And as time goes, we'll be diving into some deeper concepts, but today I want this to be a big overview. I kind of going to be probably titling this video, like, fundamentals start here. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want people to really begin this news education the right way so people are not confused. So we're going to go ahead and start we're going to start from the beginning. This, like I said, is very beginner friendly. Then we'll get into some more advanced concepts later. So this is our news training. Okay. We're going to go ahead and share the screen here real fast, and let's dive into it. Got some people on the call. We got Grace here. What's up? What's up? What's up? Got Grace. We got Steph, Billy. We got Magic, Joya. Awesome. Amazing. So let's dive into this news training. And like I said, this is going to be a little bit lengthy, but today I want to serve everyone by going really in depth. Yes, this is a beginner course, but at the end of the day, if I don't serve you the route foundation, if I don't give you a strong enough plate, how are you going to eat off of it? You can't eat food on a flimsy plate, can you? Doesn't matter how much you cook. That's a bar. If you think about it, some people are worried about the food they put on their plate. You're not focusing on how strong your plate is. You don't even have a strong enough plate to handle all the food. That's why you fold. That's why you drop your blessings, because your foundation is not solid. How are you going to hold your blessings up? You don't got a strong enough plate. All right. So today I am building your plate. I'm not building your entree. You cook your own food. I'm just going to give you a proper plate to handle your food. All right. News. Let's start from the very beginning. Very beginning. How does this work? Well, news is an acronym. Start there. All news is an acronym. All news is an acronym. It's notable events, weather, and sports. Think to yourself. Anytime you turn on the news, what are they talking about? Something that is notable to them. If you're on Fox News, what's their notable concept? Conservative right-wing media. What about CNN? That's left progressive side media. MSNBC, more towards the left. CNBC, more towards the left. Fox News, to the right. Right? Every news outlet has a bias. They believe what is notable. Okay? They have to believe what is notable. Yes, we can freely talk about everything, but you have to be careful about where you say everything on what side. Because one thing that's notable on one end is not notable on the other end. And you have to pay attention to that. Reason being, I can say that the sky is falling because of people crossing the border. On the other side can be saying the sky is falling because Joe Biden tripped down the stairs. But at the end of the day, what's the truth? The sky is falling, depending how you say it. So because it's not what is being said, it's how it's being said, you as an investor, remember, we're investors here at the end of the day. We're buying and selling stocks. We're buying and selling foreign exchange currencies. We are investing our money into the market. We have to be able to find discernment and recognize what information actually matters to us as investors. We have to get good at reading an article and comprehending, okay, they're just not really saying anything. What are they actually trying to say? You have to get good at digging up the reality on both ends. It doesn't matter where you read the news. News is news at the end of the day. Everybody has a title to their opinion and can say what they want. But you as an investor, just because somebody says something doesn't mean that there's a financial benefit from what they just said. That's why when we dive in, you'll see that certain news articles hold different levels of weight. It's because guess what? I'll say it like this. If Aaron Evans says, yo, we're in a recession, I don't have enough power to convince the nation of the United States that we're in a recession. But if somebody like Jerome Powell, who's the head of the Federal Reserve, that makes literally physically prints all the cash that we get to spend for haircuts, for nails, to put gas in our car, to work for our jobs, they print the money. And if they say we're in a recession, then they hold more weight. And because they hold more weight, the market reacts way more volatile because that person holds more weight. So that's why breaking this down is so important, because when you understand why that is, and that it's an acronym, and you understand that different people have different weights on what they say and that their words matter, you'll be able to understand why this thing exists in the first place. The reason why news exists, period, because it's designed to inform you of what's happening around you. It's designed to educate you on what's happening around you. It exists because they're trying to guide you on what to do with the information that's around you. Then they're going to try to entertain you to fit you believe a narrative, or just to simply humor you. Sometimes news is strictly just to humor you. It holds no weight in the world. It has nothing to do with nothing. It don't mean nothing. It won't change. It won't change the child's diapers. It won't put any more food on your plate. So sometimes there's news out there in the world that their sole purpose is to do what? Is to purely entertain. It's just to purely get you going. Then there's news articles that are made to interpret, right? This is more from mediums in the form of podcasting, right? Podcasts are just opinionated talk show hosts. So what are they doing? They're interpreting their reality and then speaking upon it. That's why interpreting, forming opinions, and spreading awareness are most popular for what? Podcasts. Because guess what? We can formulate an opinion about what's happening around us and then report that through TikTok, report that through Twitter, report that through Instagram, report that through news channels, because we're spreading awareness, forming opinions, and interpreting what's around us. And then at that point, we might have the intent to sell. Sometimes news has the intention to sell. And guess what? Sometimes the things that they are selling you is not always financial. I'm going to say that again. Sometimes news's job is not to sell you something financial. They're going to advertise to you a narrative. They're going to advertise to you a bias. They're going to advertise to you an emotion. They're going to advertise to you non-financial things. And you have to have the level of discernment to understand what this news article is truly doing. Is it just to entertain me? Is it just to educate me? Is it to inform me? Is it just a formulation of an opinion? Is it truly interpreting, or is it spreading awareness? Or am I being advertised something? The higher level of awareness and discernment you have when it comes to receiving news, the easier it is for you to make a logical financial decision. So not only, because here's the thing about investing. Investing is not about the best investors in the world don't make the most money because they have the most capital. The best investors in the world are very, very good at positioning themselves in front of information before it gets to the masses. That's all. That's the big difference between the rich and the poor. And yes, we can sit here and argue all day freaking long about, oh no, you got to have capital this, you got to have capital that. Or what if you come from a wealthy, affluent background, or whether you come from family? Guess what? There are people who come from affluent backgrounds that are drug addicts and do cocaine, but yet they're rich. So guess what? It ain't got nothing to do with money all the time. It just has to do with you and how well you can get in front of information and then execute on information that actually can change your financial background. That's why news is important. This is how the media plays with your head. And especially as an investor and especially as a trader, you got to get real good at discernment. You got to get really, really, really good at discernment. Why do you have to get really good at it? It's because look where news is at today. There's over 100 news channels live daily. Daily. You can get your information anywhere. YouTube University, you can go anywhere to get informed. But yet, well, how is it the fact that we never in the history of our lives have had so much access to information, but yet the literacy rate of our children keeps going down? People have become less. Our IQ has literally gone down as time has progressed, but yet we have access to the most information we've ever had. Have you ever sat back and asked yourself that there's less competent people, but yet we have more access to info? It's because of this stuff right here, what I'm showing you. Because we are so overwhelmed with the access to information, we sit in a stance of analysis paralysis where I don't really know how to act on the information that I've been given. Right? There's different levels of there's a levels to this thing. You know what the levels are? Here's a big difference between rich people and poor people that I've learned. Number one, every rich and poor people are both educated. A poor person is educated on how to stay poor. A rich person has been educated on how to stay rich. They're both educated some way, somehow. So education is usually a standard. Now, what kind of education you receive, that's different. But yes, we're both educated. Number two is how we apply the stuff that we're educated on. How do we apply what we've been educated on? Then the third step is we now have to formulate a sense of mastery or mindset on the applications or systems that we've been educated on. And then we have to get specialized on the mastery that we've obtained based off the applications and systems we've applied around the education that we've been given to. And because there's over 100 news channels daily, because there's only 4 companies that own the news channels, you as the individual do not have the ability to formulate that many opinions. You don't have a choice. It's going to be hard for you to formulate original opinion and original thought, because why? With 100 channels news daily, with only 4 companies really owning everything. Walt Disney Television, CBS Entertainment Group, NBCU Television, and streaming and Fox are the top 4 news companies in the world. That's ABC News, Good Morning America, CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, ESPN, Disney, right? ABC, NBC, ABC News, 60 Minutes. All these news programs, all talking about different stuff, all damn near saying the same thing. But yet they're all owned by the top 4, all the same 4 companies. So ask yourself another question. Do we really have true freedom in the world of educating ourselves on what's happening around us? Not really. But yet there's the illusion that we do because there's so much information out there. So a skill set you're going to develop if you want to get really good at fundamentals in the beginning stages. That's why I said in the very beginning, be prepared to unlearn what you already know and be prepared to learn things that you thought you never needed to know. That's the only way you're going to get through this game properly. Begin to unlearn stuff. Let me give you some numbers. There's $22.5 billion a year industry. That means there is literally over $22.5 billion funneled into media companies alone, funneled in, not out, in, to literally report news to you, to get stuff on your phone, how your mom and dad gets information from CNN, MSNBC, etc. $22 billion is pumped every year to make sure that information can get to you. That's why the average watch time is 3 hours a day. The average person will sit down and watch the news for 3 hours a day out of their day. But because ever since the emergence of COVID, when COVID first happened, the credibility of that information would drop to 50%. Almost half of the people on earth don't even believe what they're seeing on television, on TV, but they don't know how to do what? They don't know how to apply what they're seeing. They don't know how to apply what they see. Now they can't even formulate a mindset around their seeing. And then they can't even specialize in what they're thinking on. So I'll give you a great example. I'll just give you a great example, right? We'll use Kanye West's situation as an example. Kanye West, right? Multi-billionaire guy. And if you're watching this video, you're on a Zoom call and you're asking something like, well, when can I get into the charts? This is important because when I get to the charts, watch how this plays out. Imagine Kanye West, right? You're Kanye West. You got $1 billion. You're a $1 billion man. You got a lot of influence, right? That means you have access to things. You have access to people. You have access to information. You got $1 billion. You have access to things. And let's say, for example, like Kanye West did, you call out that Jewish people own the media. You call it out, right? In that example, he was educated on something that most people are not educated on. And because at the time he was educated on something, whether it's true or not, I'm using an example, because he was educated on something that most people did not know, most people cannot apply what he was educated on. And because those people can't apply what he was educated on based off what they were telling him, because they can't apply it, he now has the power to continue to control the narrative and allow you to believe what he says because you don't know what he's talking about. So he now has the power to contort and continue a narrative that may or may not be true. And that affects everybody. That's like how you have the power to control whatever you say out of your mouth. Whatever you affirm into the universe is what you affirm. Why? Because you have that power of control. If we understand that on a personal level, if we understand that when it comes to celebrities and how they stand on politics or music or hard issues, do you not think that the news company medias like CNN, MSNBC, the Fed, the US government can do the same thing? No, you couldn't. They do the same exact thing. We do it on a personal level. That's called lying to people or keeping a secret. We do that on a personal level. We keep secrets to ourselves all the time. Don't you think news companies keep secrets too? Don't you think the big rich people keep secrets behind our backs? And then we find out about later? Yes. All the time. All the time. Because guess what? Because the reason why they do that is because now these .coms, these websites that we're looking at stuff are literally organized in a way about who owns it, who controls the flow of info, right? So if you're taking a screenshot here, Each of these .coms, .orgs, .nets, .biz, .mil, these are telling you who controls the domain of the information, right? Who is dominating? Think about it. Domain, domination. Domination means what? Take over or have control of. Domain is have control of what? Information. Are you the main? Do you have domination over the information? Domain, that's where it is. So by understanding how these domains are formed by .com, .org, .net, then you can begin to think to yourself, okay, what kind of person is reporting or funneling this information that I'm reading? What kind of person is behind the scenes, behind the computer, making the decision to funnel in, right? To funnel in information that we're reading on a website, like a .com, like an X, like a Facebook, like a Twitter, like a CNN, right? That's where you get really good at discernment, when you're able to ask yourself more questions. And the more questions you ask, the more answers that you receive. And the more answers that you get, the easier it is for you to recognize a pattern in the what, aka the market, because we all know that the market is just based off of patterns and algorithms and numbers and movements and emotions. So the more that we have discernment over our algorithms and numbers and emotions and feelings that we live in our own current life, when we see that on a chart or we see that behavior being emulated on a screen, we're able to recognize the patterns, just like how we're able to recognize red flags if we see a girl walk around with a BAL or a guy who's going to be in a complete asshole. We're so good at recognizing red flags in people. We can take that same skill set that we're doing in recognizing red flags and recognizing red flags in the market. We understand where the domain comes from. We understand who the person who's printing out that article. We understand what their bias is, and we understand why they're financially driven to do that. So now we, as investors, can be in proper position before the market reacts to the decision. I really hope you guys are following. I hope you guys are following that, because watch this. When we talk about the word domain again, right? Right? Check this word domain. Right? Domain, by definition, has multiple meanings. Right? A domain can also be an area of interest. An area of interest. All right? So because we have an area of interest, what do you think these domains are doing? They're advertising to a certain interest of people. All right. So now so this is what I talk about when you guys are on different websites, and these are some good websites for you guys, for traders, for news traders. You're reading Reuters, Bloomberg, CNBC, X, and Forex Factory. These are my top 5. Over my 6 years of trading and my 6 years of really understanding fundamentals, you have to understand, where are you gathering your information from? Where are you receiving that news article about the jobs report, about certain economic stuff that's affecting you as a trader? You have to know where it's coming from. You need to understand that, because then you understand why it happened. And the better you understand why it happens, then when you see that same repeated pattern, you're able to go, I know why that's happening. I know why that's a thing, because I've seen it before. I've seen this pattern. I've seen this market structure. I've seen this confirmation before. Now, what is that always going to do? The more confirmations you get, the more confidence that you gain. And the more confidence that you gain, the more confluence that you can create. The more confluence that you can create can turn around and get you more confirmations that gains the confidence. You're now moving in this triangular formula of confidence, confluence, and confirmations. More confirmations you get, it raises up your confidence. Raises up your confidence, you find more confluence. You create more confluence, you create more confirmations. And you get more confirmations, that gets you more confidence. It's this triangular thing that you're doing. All because you did what? You built a level of discernment. You have a high level of awareness of information and how it's being fed to you. So now you'll be able to make a smart decision in the market. So specifically, we're going to be targeting Forex Factory today. All right. As a beginner fundamentalist, we are going to be targeting Forex Factory. Why are we targeting this? Because Forex Factory has done a really good job of not allowing bias to enter in these reporting. This is a pure numbers game when it comes to Forex Factor. When you dive into Reuters and Bloomberg and X and CNBC and those kind of places, or even YouTube, you're going to run into bias. You're going to run into bias of people. So I like Forex Factory is because there's no bias involved. It's just pure data. It's just data driven. When you go to other news platforms, they might be narrative driven. Hear what I just said? You need a good balance of news information that's data driven versus news that's narrative driven. Data also drives the market, same way that narratives do. If the narrative is Nike is I'll do an example. If the narrative gets pushed out by the media that Starbucks supports genocide with Palestine, and that gets out, then people stop buying Starbucks products. What does that evidently do for the stock? It brings the stock price down. But because that news article is out to the public and now we're seeing that stock price drop, who's to say in the background that investors were already deciding to short sell the company for a long time? Right? Who's to say that there were already investors that we don't know who was already short selling Starbucks? And now news gives everybody else the excuse to sell the stock. But there was people already in position to sell it anyway. Right? The whole world thinks that, oh, Starbucks supports genocide, so we're going to stop buying their cups, when in actuality, Starbucks has been losing money. Starbucks has been losing revenue. They haven't been innovating, and companies like Canva have been literally taking over. People have not been buying as much as Starbucks is. So guess what happens? I'm just giving you an example. Because Starbucks was losing money and that narrative was being pushed by the media, the CEO of Starbucks leaves, dips, and took his people. And guess who he becomes? The CEO of Chipotle. All because of what? The company's losing money, and there's a nasty narrative that they support genocide going around. So guess what somebody does? The CEO leaves, joins another company called Chipotle, and then Chipotle stocks goes to the moon. That's just the reality of that is. So I hope that makes sense, that decisions are already made. We're just watching these react in real time, and that's why the market is. So the Forex Factory gives you guys, Forex Factory is going to be your best opportunity to get in position before the news reports it. I'm going to say that again. Forex Factory is going to be one of the best tools that you can utilize to get in position before it gets reported, before the Wall Street Journal, before Watcher Guru, before X, before CNN, before even the president comes out and says an official data number. Forex Factory is a website where you guys can literally get ahead of news articles that are going to come out on the day. And guess what? Forex Factory doesn't miss. So yes, it is super reliable and there's no bias. It's just numbers and data. So, but on Forex Factory, there's a different level of folders. Remember we talked about earlier in this call that different people hold different weight when they say things? Same thing as Forex Factory. Different color folders determines to you the weight at which this folder will cause you a reaction in the market. And we're going to go through a lot of folders and give you guys some examples, right? Before we get into these folders, there is some pieces of information you need to understand. The most important person in all of the world when it comes to economic news is not the president. I hate to break it to you. The president has no say in this. They can propose all they want to. They can propose all they want to say. We're going to do this and we're going to do this. And this is all across the world. But none of those economic policies that any world leader will push, Those don't get pushed unless the banks that funnel money into the countries approves of that policy. Because these guys print the money. Oh, we want to help 3 million people. We want to build some homes for 3 million people. It's a great thing. It's great. It sounds great. You want to build homes. You want to help out the homeless. You want to do some things. And I think a lot of people would agree that would be an amazing thing. But yet somebody's got to pay for that. And guess who's got to pay that price? Not only taxpayers, but the central banks got to pay the price. How does the government have money? Think about it. How does the government have money to spend? Do you truly think it's just based off of taxes? No, there's a central bank that's printing money to allow them to spend it. That's why countries go into debt. They go into deficits because they're printing more money than they're making. I didn't say make, right? I didn't say make the money. They're printing it. Yeah, they're physically making it. I'll say it like this. If a country itself is in a deficit, that means the central bank is providing that government more money that they're spending money out more than money's coming in, right? They're operating in a deficit. It's kind of like yourself, right? It's kind of like you. You go out and you only have $100 in your bank account, but you really, really, really want to buy those pair of shoes. So you go get credit or debt so you can go buy those shoes. And now you use debt to spend money that you didn't have. And so these central banks do that for all across the world. They print money for their governments so the governments can spend money to build your roads, to help build with schools and stuff. So when a central bank, like these central banks, come out and say something, you need to pay attention to these guys. These guys have way more power over just a random politician. They can say whatever they want. We need to do this with our money. Yeah, with money you got what? You got to go to these guys to get it, huh? Even governments have bank accounts. And these are the banks that, manage those government's bank accounts. So let's dive into them a little bit, right? Federal Reserve, right? The Federal Reserve, also known as the FOMC, Federal Market Opening Committee. These are the guys that manages the US dollar. And it's not just one guy that manages the US dollar. Just how like governments are built, you have a board of governors, you have different locations or different offices, and of course you have like the CEO or the head guy. The head guy's name is called Jerome Powell. You definitely want to become best friends with him. You want to follow him on all social media platforms, if he has any. If he has social media platforms, you definitely want to go ahead and follow the guy. Just go ahead and follow the guy, right? FOMC. This is the Federal Market Opening Committee. They manage the US dollar. There's 3 groups. You have the Board of Governors, you have the federal banks, and then you have the Marketing Opening Committee. So you have the Board of Governors, right? The Board of Governors in the Federal Reserve, right? YouTube Federal Reserve channel. Great, right there. The Federal Reserve, each federal location has a governor that runs it, and those governors are the board. Okay, so the Federal Reserve has banks in 12 different locations across the United States. In Dallas, in Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Cleveland, Richmond, Atlanta, Chicago, St. Louis, Minneapolis, Kansas City, and San Francisco. And the cool thing about these Federal Reserve banks, I had the privilege of hearing this, that money moves like water, right? That's why water moves in currents and dollars moves in currency, right? Currents. Then you have the rivers, right? River is where water is moving. Then where did some of the biggest civilizations in the world are built? Tokyo, Shanghai, London, South Africa, the capital, Johannesburg, South Africa, Rio de Janeiro, New York City, Miami, Florida, Seattle, Washington, Auckland, New Zealand, Sydney, Australia, the UAE, Cairo, Egypt, Greece, Italy, like Athens, Greece, Venice, Italy. Some of the biggest countries and the most populous countries in the world are all built by what, ladies and gentlemen? Bodies of water. Bodies of water. Because where civilizations are built are by the riverbanks, where the water is being collected to be used to help out build the early homes and water the crops, etc. Right? They lived by the riverbank. That's where towns were built, by riverbanks, because they needed a collection of water to be able to be used in society. So if I am a bank and I need to be positioned somewhere where the money is going to be flowing to me, the money has the currency needs to flow through a river bank, and I'm going to set up a bank by the river to collect the currency that the current is carrying the money towards. So don't be surprised when you go by banks or you go by where you Google these Federal Reserve Bank locations, they pick cities where they're by bodies of water. When you do your research and look at the locations of these Federal Reserve buildings. They're all by bodies of water. It's not by coincidence. It's by design. All right? It's by design. We'll dive into the FOMC later in different episodes. We'll do a deep dive into them. Super excited, but this is an overview today. But I hope I'm giving you guys a lot of game and a lot of gems. All right. Next, the Bank of England. They manage the Great British Pound. Okay. Great British Pound is only used in one country, Great Britain. If you step out anywhere outside of the UK and you go into Europe, not really anybody else is using the pound. Barely. Only one country is, which is the Bank of England. Because why are they so big? Do not forget. So ask yourself a question. Ask yourself a real honest question. How do you remember in history class, you learned that the British Navy, drop a one or a comment if you believe this. Drop a one if you remember in history class, you learned that the British Empire had one of the most powerful naval fleets on Earth. Drop a one if you remember that in history class. That you learned that at some point, the UK, England, the British had one of the most powerful naval vessels in the world. The Ottoman Empire, the Roman Empire, the Mongolian Empire, these big, huge empires taking over, conquesting all this land. Don't you think that all those big empires cost? You ever sit back and ask you who's financially backing all these empires? Ask yourself that honest question. We hear about it all the time. Oh, there's these big kingdoms and all these big, great nations of people and all these folk that are taking over land and they're conquesting the Roman Empire and the Ottoman Empire, the Great British Empire. Someone's financially backing these empires. If they didn't have the finances, they wouldn't be conquesting land, right? They conquested land to get more money because they needed more money to bring back to their country so they can build their economy. Well, you need a location that's going to do that for you. The Bank of England did that for Great Britain. Then you move into the euro, right? The European Central Bank, they manage the euro. You guys understand that there's more than 15 countries in Europe that utilize the euro. Like these are 15 countries, not just one country. Like the United States uses the dollar. Great Britain uses the pound. These are 15 countries like Italy, Germany, Spain, Portugal, Austria, Hungary, Greece, Montenegro, Cyprus, lots of them, Romania. They're using the euro. Those are full-blown countries with their own governments, with their own sporting teams, with their own national anthems, with their own flags. But yet, all of those countries combined has one central bank. So ask yourself, if the Prime Minister of France says something about economic policy, who cares? He's still got to go to the ECB to get approval. But guess what? The ECB, if they make a decision on the euro, France is not the only people affected. There's 17 other countries that are also affected. Why? So now why would that matter to you? is because if we're trading, if we're trading in the market, especially the European stock market or even the foreign exchange market with the euro, there's 50 pairs that involve the euro. There's a ton of currency pairs that involve the euro. So now you understand that the weight of the euro is not just the euro. You understand that when a news article comes out that's about the euro, you have to now back up and understand it's not just one country that's affected. There's 13 to 14 to 15, almost 20 countries that are going to be affected economically because of the decision that one central bank is making. That's where you have to wake up and smell the roses and be like, yo, who cares what the leader really says? Yes, do they have weight? Absolutely. I remember when Donald Trump was president, he had so much power of what he said, the stock market reacted to every tweet that he said when he was president. That's how powerful you have to be as a man. As a leader of a nation, if you're that powerful to where a simple tweet can move the market, that means you have influence. So really ask yourself, when you look at all these politicians and these leaders and they're saying stuff about the economy, watch how the market reacts to what they say. If the market don't react into what they say, then you can be comfortable knowing in your head, whatever he says, not really going to matter. But if he says something, oh, yeah, the market really going to move. Right? Bank of Japan, they manage all the yen. Swiss National Bank, they manage the Swiss franc. They tell you got some history here, right? We need history. Ask yourself a question for my history junkies. World War I and World War II. Switzerland was a neutral country in each of those world wars. No one ever stepped foot in the Swiss. They didn't. They didn't step foot in there. They were a neutral country. You ever heard of a Swiss bank account? And they always say all the rich people go to Swiss bank accounts. They always want to open up a Swiss bank account. It makes you think almost like, man, why was Switzerland such a very well-protected country during both of the world wars? Maybe the Swiss National Bank was funding both sides of the war. That's why no country went in there and attacked them. Right? So by now understanding these central banks, you can now understand the weight on who they are and what they do. All right? And now because you understand the weight of what they do, you now can dive into the Bank of Canada. They control the Canadian dollar. The Reserve Bank of Australia, they control the Australian dollar. The Reserve Bank of New Zealand, they manage the New Zealand dollar, right? Because they manage these different things, they now hold a certain level of weight when they go online or they go out and they start speaking on economic things. You can have confidence that whatever market you're investing into, when these people who run these banks come out and say something, and they come out and speak, guess what? They hold weight. They are going to make the market move. And as we go along this journey of fundamentals, I will be diving into these central banks a lot and how much they affect, right? And so when you dive into this a little bit deeper and you understand how these central banks are influenced, your next level of understanding fundamentals is currency strength, okay? The strength of the currency. The reason why you have to understand currency strength is because every market is controlled by a bias. There's a narrative, right? Example, when things are buying in the stock market or in the Forex market and you see the chart trending upwards, right? That means there is a narrative that has been created that this asset, whether it's gold, Bitcoin, Tesla, NVIDIA, what this uptrend is telling you as an investor, that the narrative around this asset is positive. There's a positive trend narrative being formed behind the scenes, and the candlesticks are printing in front of you that narrative in the form of technical analysis. So now you can analyze that narrative technically so that you can see the trend is positive, that's going up. All because fundamentally there is a narrative. That narrative gives the asset strength. And based off of the positioning of where that asset is in the currency pair determines the direction. Let me break that down for you again. When you look at a chart and you see that it's going up or down, fundamentally, there is a narrative that has been agreed upon based off a decision that a whole bunch of rich people have already made. They make a decision, they get a narrative. That narrative starts affecting the charts. And it's now starting to get printed in the form of green candles and red candles that are moving in an upward direction. Then all of a sudden, you see a real sharp news candle go in the upward direction. You get a text message. CNN comes out, right? CNN comes out with this article that says, "Oh, Nvidia is the new leader of AI technology that's going to cure cancer." But guess what? Notice in the order of how that went down. It goes decision being made behind closed doors, formulate a narrative, pump money into the media. This is the story that we have decided that we're going to push. Now we tell our buddies, our closest buddies, "Hey, yo, buy this. Hey, yo, sell this. Hey, yo, get ready to blah, blah, blah." We start telling our local buddies. Now we start seeing that get printed on a candlestick chart just a little bit, little by little, up and down, up and down. It starts getting printed in the form of candlesticks. It follows market structure. Then you go ahead and go, "Okay, I've seen this pattern before. I'm going to mark my trend lines. I'm going to mark my support resistance because I've seen this pattern before. I got my little wedge. I got my little double top going. I got my double bottom going. I got my Fibonacci's ready to go. I'm ready." Sharp spike in the market. Then a text message comes. News article drops. So guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Who's always going to be late? The people who rely on the news article to be said to them first. The people who purely rely on the news article to be texted to their phone, the move has already happened. The decision was already made. You're just getting a lagging indicator of a decision that was already formulated in the form of a news article that is deemed notable to the platform that's telling you, "I'm talking to somebody. This is clicking to somebody." It happens. And now, because of the positioning of the asset that's being reported, it's sitting on the chart, will determine the direction. So if you're trading the US dollar and something that comes out that's maybe says that's negative and gives the dollar, right? And then as you're seeing, if something comes out, a news article that's maybe negative, that gives the dollar low strength, here's what you're going to see. You're going to start seeing any currency pair that has XXX formed. So this is GBP USD, Euro USD, gold. Those kind of currency pairs will start buying together. Why will they all start buying together? Because the constant between all those pairs is the dollar. That's the constant, is the dollar. And those currency pairs will all buy up in the same direction. When you see a currency pair for the dollar that says XXX, USD XXX, this is USD CAD, USD CHF, for example, those currency pairs will begin to sell because of a negative news article that gives the dollar low strength that was paid for, that was reported by a news outlet that believes that's notable, that news company was then paid for by the decision that was made because the rich buddies were all talking because of the decision that was made behind closed doors. Flip it. Let's say something good comes out about the dollar. That strengthens the currency. Okay, that strengthens the currency. Right there, high strength news that gives a currency high strength. Anything that's GU, gold, EU, those pairs will start to sell. they'll sell dramatically, really, really hard. And if that news article that gives something hard, a high level of strength, that's USD CAD or USD Chef, those currency pairs will begin to buy rapidly, not just gradually, rapidly. All right. So these are all of our currency types. Okay. These are all our currency types. So our currency types are based off this. You have your consumer-based pairs. Okay. Your consumer-based pairs means that the countries that these currencies are operating in are very, very fundamentally, they're going to follow what we are doing as people. And so if you start to read news articles that are focused around consumers, and the country that's going to be reporting that consumer data is a consumer-based currency, the market is going to react way more heavily than before. I'm going to say that again from the very beginning. If you live in a country that has a currency that is fundamentally built around consumers like me and you, and there's a news article that comes out or that is coming out, or a news report that's coming out that's going to be very focused around the consumers, then expect the market to react way more violently, or way more, now I would say like way more violently or way more fundamentally than others. Same thing comes with commodity-based pairs, such as the Canadian dollar, Australian dollar, and New Zealand dollar. If a news article comes out that focuses on the commodity like oil, gas, natural gas, corn, wheat, and there's a currency that's directly correlated to that commodity, and a news article is going to come out specifically speaking on a certain commodity, and you have a currency pair that's directly correlated to that commodity, you're going to get a way more heavier reaction than something if it's consumer-based. Okay, so some of the most commonly known commodities when it comes to certain currency pairs are these. You have the Canadian dollar is very, very highly correlated to oil. You have the Australian dollar is related to gold. And then you have New Zealand dollar, very favorable to agriculture, sugar, and copper. You know, and as we go through these fundamentals, we'll be diving into these currencies really, really deeply into more research and history and stuff. But remember that these are your top 8 major currencies, and the top 5 are consumer based with the pound. You have the dollar, the euro, the pound, and JPY and CHF, which is the Swiss franc. And then you have your commodity based pairs, which is the Canadian dollar, Australian dollar, and New Zealand dollar. All right. So those is really the basics of news, man, you know? So as much as I want to continue, I believe that a full hour of your time is plenty enough for you to sit back, receive the information, and go, okay, I have something to start with. I don't want to give you everything up front because what I just gave you was a lot. It was a lot to ask yourself. It was a lot to go, wait a minute. Well, why do news companies do this? Or why are certain articles written like this to evoke a certain emotion, and that emotion causes me to make a different investment decision, and because I make a different investment decision, that investment decision can cause certain companies or certain currencies or certain markets to trend in certain directions. But what I gave you tonight was a start. This is just a start to deepening into the fundamentals. Because as we go through more fundamentals calls and more episodes like this, you're going to start to see how you can start applying it. And I hope today in episode 1 of the beginning of fundamentals, our very first episode of the Friday Night Fundamentals, you know, I hope this is something that you guys are going to be able to enjoy. We're going to be going through a long journey of fundamentals because I know that every single week is going to be more to talk about. We're going to talk about what's happening through the week financially every Friday. So be prepared for before the call even starts. We're going to start off with a quick news rundown of the week. What happened this week financially? What companies merged with who? What big corporations made a decision? We're going to talk about that every Friday so I can give you guys a recap of what's going to happen in the week. And then we'll dive into the lesson. So you guys not only are going to be educated, you're going to get educated on news. Then I'm going to teach you guys how to apply the news. Then you guys will be able to set or create a certain mindset around the news. And then you guys can get specialized in certain news articles. And look what I did today. I educated you on news, what is news, how it's being used, who's involved in the news, who applies the news, who uses the news, how the news affects us. I gave you guys an introduction to who are some of the major players or who we need to start listening to. And then I told you guys the currencies and how they're affected by who's talking to. So I will see you guys with episode 2. Be on the lookout for that. Have a great rest of your beautiful Friday. Comment or text me or message me on the side on all social media platforms if you have any questions or concerns. But I hope you guys enjoyed my first episode of Friday Night Fundamentals. I'll see you guys next Friday. Love you all. Have a great day.